My wife Rebecca walked out on a Tuesday morning, taking half of everything and leaving me with $1,200 in checking and 2 kids still in college. 3 months later, I was sitting in a plasma center with a needle in my arm, earning $60 twice a week just to buy groceries and keep the lights on. The nurse drawing my blood had no idea she was extracting liquid worth $3.2 million. I'm Jacob Stewart, and when my wife left me, broke at 61, I thought selling my plasma was rock bottom. I was wrong. Rock bottom was watching my MBA son and medical student daughter call me just a blood supplier in front of 500 people after they found out what I was really worth. But that discovery, the one that changed everything, started with a phone call I never expected. But before I tell you how $60 became $60 million, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories about quiet justice. Let me take you back to where this all started. Rebecca walked out on a Tuesday morning in March 26 months ago. 28 years of marriage ended with a post-it note on the refrigerator. I can't pretend anymore. Lawyer will call. She took half of everything we'd built together, the house, the savings, the retirement account I'd been feeding for 3 decades. But she left me with something more valuable than money. She left me with Brandon, 24 years old, and 6 months into his Harvard MBA program. Ashley, 21, finishing her 3rd year of medical school at Johns Hopkins. 2 brilliant children who still believe their father could move mountains. My knees ached from 30 years of mopping university hallways. My shoulders burned from lifting industrial trash bins. But every morning I put on that janitor's uniform like it was a 3-piece suit, because I had a promise to keep. I made them a promise I'd never break. Brandon's acceptance letter to Harvard Business School arrived on letterhead so thick you could feel the prestige. $80,000 total program cost. Ashley's medical school expenses ran another $60,000 per year. After Rebecca took her half, I had $23,000 in checking and a pile of bills that kept growing. I sold my truck first, a 2003 Ford F-150 that had never let me down. Got $4,200 from a dealer who knew desperation when he saw it. Then came my father's watch collection. Omega, Rolex, vintage pieces he'd left me. The pawn shop gave me $8,500 for 30 years of memories. My wedding ring went last. White gold band that Rebecca had slipped on my finger in 1996. The jeweler offered $320. I stood there holding 28 years of marriage in my palm, watching him test the metal with acid. The burn in my throat felt worse than any chemical. By October, I was taking 3 buses to work because I couldn't afford car payments, eating peanut butter sandwiches for dinner, while my children posted Instagram photos from expensive restaurants near their schools. That was the last time they'd call me their hero. The first time I walked into New England Plasma Center, my hands were shaking so hard I could barely sign the intake forms. The nurse, a kind woman named Maria, explained the process with gentle efficiency. 2 donations per week maximum. $35 for the first visit, $60 for the second. $1,240 per month if I never missed an appointment. It was barely enough to cover groceries and utilities, but it was steady income when everything else had fallen apart. I learned to time my visits perfectly. Tuesday and Friday mornings, 6 a.m. sharp, before my shift at the university started. The needle pinch became routine. The slow pull of blood from my arm became meditation. I'd watch that crimson flow and calculate. $60 covers groceries for 4 days. $60 pays the electric bill. $60 keeps my children's dreams alive. Brandon called every Sunday. Dad, everything I achieve is because of you. I won't let you down. Ashley sent thank you cards with photos of herself in scrubs, smiling beside hospital equipment that cost more than I made in 6 months. My pride swelled despite my exhaustion, despite the needle marks, despite eating instant ramen while my body recovered enough to donate again. The call came on a Wednesday in February. Dr. Harrison from the Plasma Center, his voice carrying an excitement I'd never heard before. Mr. Stewart, We need you to come in for additional testing. Your blood shows some very unusual compatibility markers. I sat in the laboratory chair while technicians drew vial after vial. Red tubes labeled with numbers I didn't understand. They tested enzyme levels, antibody concentrations, protein structures that sounded like foreign languages. Dr. Harrison kept checking results, then checking them again. Mr. Stewart, you have something extraordinary, a rare enzyme complex that occurs in less than 1 person per million. We've been contacted by Blackwood Pharmaceuticals. Their CEO, Richard Blackwood, has a genetic disorder that's been killing him slowly for 3 years. Your blood contains the exact proteins needed to neutralize his condition. The words hit my chest like cold water. What does that mean? It means Richard Blackwood would like to meet you. And it means your life is about to change in ways you never imagined. What will this partnership really mean? Richard Blackwood's office occupied the entire 52nd floor of the Prudential Tower. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over Boston Harbor. The man himself was smaller than I had expected, pale, trembling slightly, but his handshake was firm. Mr. Stewart, I'm dying. His voice was steady, matter-of-fact. The doctors give me 18 months, maybe less. Your blood contains enzymes that could extend my life by decades, possibly save it entirely. The contract he placed before me was 37 pages of legal language I barely understood, but the numbers were crystal clear. $3.5 million for exclusive rights to my blood supply over 10 years, monthly donations, medical monitoring, and a position as Chief Medical Relations Officer at Blackwood Pharmaceuticals, starting salary $75,000 per year. My hands shook as I held the Mont Blanc pen he offered. The contract paper felt heavier than it should, crisp and official. Contract number BW 2024-0892, with my name typed in 12-point Times New Roman. Mr. Blackwood, this is more money than I've made in my entire life. Jacob. May I call you Jacob? This isn't charity. You're saving my life. I'm simply compensating you fairly. I thought this would solve everything. The trust account at First National Bank took 3 days to establish. Patricia Walsh, the corporate attorney, walked me through every document with patience I didn't deserve. 2 separate $500,000 education trusts. One for Brandon's startup dreams. One for Ashley's medical career. When I called Brandon with the news, his silence lasted so long, I thought the connection had dropped. Dad, are you serious? $500,000? Your education is complete. Now you can chase bigger dreams. I've actually been working on a business plan, a fintech startup called Pinnacle Innovations. This could be the seed funding I need to launch properly. Ashley's reaction was pure joy. Daddy, this means I can finally afford that dermatology fellowship, the one in California I've been dreaming about. Their gratitude felt so genuine. Brandon sent a handwritten letter thanking me for believing in my vision. Ashley called every other day just to talk, something she hadn't done since high school. I established the trusts with one requirement. Major withdrawals over $50,000 needed my written approval. The bank manager assured me this was standard practice for educational trusts. Protects against impulsive spending, she explained. I should have made the limit much lower. Brandon's first advance request arrived by email 3 weeks later. A formal business proposal requesting $200,000 in startup capital. 43 slides of financial projections, market analysis, and revenue forecasts that looked professionally crafted. Dad, the opportunity window is closing. I need to move fast to secure our market position. Ashley's request came the same week. $150,000 for essential medical equipment and training. She'd found a plastic surgery residency program that would revolutionize her career trajectory. I sat in my studio apartment, surrounded by their carefully crafted presentations. Sweat formed on my forehead as I read through business plans I didn't understand, and medical programs that cost more than most people's houses. My financial advisor, a sharp woman named Carol Henderson, reviewed both proposals with a frown. Jacob, these requests are aggressive. You might want to implement some oversight. But these were my children, My brilliant, educated children who understood markets and medicine better than I ever would. What did a janitor know about business strategy or medical careers? They're adults. They know what they're doing. I should have listened to my gut. The credit card statements arrived in May. Ashley's American Express showed $50,000 in charges over 6 weeks. Hermes handbags, $3,200. Cartier watch, $8,500. Weekend in the Hamptons, $4,800. Dinner at Per Se, $850 for 2 people. I called her on a Thursday evening. She was at a wine bar in Manhattan, her voice bright with alcohol and entitlement. Daddy, these are networking expenses. In medicine, appearance matters. I'm building relationships with important people. Ashley, this is $50,000 in 6 weeks. The fellowship is highly competitive. I need to make the right impression. Brandon's expenses were harder to track, but more creative. Office space rental at $12,000 per month for a co-working desk. Business development meals at 5-star restaurants. Technology infrastructure that included a Tesla lease and MacBook Pro collection. When I questioned the Tesla, his explanation came smooth and practiced. Dad, in tech, perception drives investment. Investors need to see success before they'll fund success. I discovered later that his office space was a membership at an exclusive golf club. His technology infrastructure included gaming equipment and a home theater system. The bank meeting was scheduled for 2 p.m. on a Wednesday. Patricia Walsh sat across from my children with a stack of papers, an expression I'd never seen before. Legal documents, trust modifications, spending oversight protocols. Your father is implementing some financial controls, she explained. Standard practice for large trusts. Brandon's reaction was immediate and sharp. Financial controls? Don't you trust your own son? Brandon, this isn't about trust. It's about responsibility. Ashley's tears started before anyone could answer her. Daddy, I thought you wanted us to succeed. Now you're treating us like children. The guilt hit my stomach like acid. These were my babies. My brilliant children who never asked for anything before I had millions to give. Maybe I was being too careful. Maybe successful people spent money differently than janitors understood. I watched Ashley's shoulders shake with sobs. I listened to Brandon's voice crack as he explained how financial oversight would damage his credibility with investors. I'm sorry, I said. Let's postpone the oversight discussion. Patricia Walsh's face remained neutral, but I caught her slight headshake. That's when they decided I was the enemy. Brandon's startup, Pinnacle Innovations, launched with a website that cost $40,000 and a logo that won design awards. 6 months later, revenue reports showed exactly $0 in income. When I asked about clients or products, his explanations became increasingly vague. Dad, you don't understand modern business. We're in the customer acquisition phase. Revenue comes later. Ashley missed our monthly dinner for the 3rd consecutive time. Her excuse arrived via text. Yacht party with medical colleagues. Important networking. The photo she posted showed her on a 200-foot yacht anchored off Martha's Vineyard, holding champagne that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. I started asking questions they didn't want to answer. Where exactly was Ashley's fellowship? Who were Brandon's actual business partners? Why did neither of them seem to have regular schedules anymore? Dad, you're being paranoid, Ashley said during our last phone conversation. Just because you don't understand our careers doesn't mean we're doing anything wrong. Brandon was more direct. Dad, you don't understand modern business. Your generation thinks success means punching a time clock. That's not how the world works anymore. The tone had shifted. Gratitude was becoming condescension. The startup launch party was held at the Harvard Club, 2 blocks from the university, where I'd mopped floors for 30 years. Brandon invited me with obvious reluctance. It's mostly investors and tech people, Dad. You might find it boring. I wore my only suit, bought secondhand for Rebecca's cousin's wedding in 2019. It didn't fit quite right, but it was clean and pressed. The party was full of 20-somethings in expensive casual clothes, holding wine glasses and discussing disruption and scalability with the confidence of people who'd never missed a meal. I stood near the bar, sipping club soda and watching my son work the room. That's when I overheard the conversation. "Brandon's startup sounds interesting," a woman in a $500 blouse was saying. "Where'd he get his funding?" "His dad is just some janitor who got lucky," Brandon's business partner replied. "Sold his blood to some pharmaceutical company. Brandon's the real brains here." I felt heat rush to my face. My drink glass sweated in my nervous hands. Ashley introduced me to her medical colleagues as my father the donor, not my father the university employee, or my father who sacrificed everything for our education. Just the donor. They stopped seeing me as their father. The $300,000 emergency loan request arrived in August, marked urgent in Brandon's email. A last-minute investor meeting required immediate capital injection. The opportunity was time-sensitive and potentially worth millions. Ashley's parallel request was for $200,000 in medical research investment, a groundbreaking study that would revolutionize aesthetic medicine. She needed to move fast before other doctors secured the opportunity. I called Patricia Walsh to discuss the requests. Her voice carried new concern. "Jacob, I need to tell you something. Your children have been attempting to access the trust principal directly. They've contacted the bank multiple times, claiming emergency situations." The room felt suddenly cold. "What kind of emergencies?" "Different stories each time. Medical bills, business opportunities, family crises." The bank flagged it as unusual activity. That evening, I reviewed their latest financial documents more carefully. Brandon's business plan contained projections that made no mathematical sense. Ashley's medical research proposal included participant costs that seemed impossibly high. Then I found the bank documents. Applications for credit lines using their trust funds as collateral. Forms with signatures that looked like mine but felt wrong somehow. My signature, forged on documents I'd never seen. What else are they lying about? The confrontation happened on a Sunday evening. I'd spent hours preparing what to say, how to express my hurt without damaging our relationship permanently. I called Brandon first. "Son, we need to talk. I've been feeling like you and Ashley don't see me as your father anymore, just as a source of money." His silence stretched longer than comfortable. Then his voice came back different, colder. "Dad, let's be honest here. You are just a source of money now. You got lucky with your blood, but Ashley and I are the ones with education and talent. We're the ones turning your medical condition into something meaningful." The words hit my chest like physical blows. "Brandon, I'm your father, and I'm grateful for that. But facts are facts. We're the entrepreneurs. We're the innovators. You're the donor. That's not insulting. It's just realistic about everyone's contribution." I called Ashley immediately after. Surely she'd understand how much those words hurt. "Daddy, I love you, but Brandon's right. You need to let us be adults and stop being so sensitive about money. We're not ungrateful. We're just realistic about the situation." The ringing in my ears lasted for hours. That was the moment everything changed inside me. The private investigator's name was Michael Torres. Patricia Walsh recommended him with 5 words: "He finds what people hide." Torres worked fast. Within a week, I had 3 folders of evidence sitting on my kitchen table. Bank records, credit applications, expense reports, and something that made my stomach drop. Screenshots of a private group chat. Brandon to Ashley: "The old man is getting suspicious about spending." Ashley to Brandon: "Just keep him focused on how grateful we are. He eats that up." Brandon: "Honestly, it's pathetic. He acts like we owe him something for doing basic parental duties." Ashley: "LOL, right? Like, congrats, Dad, you supported your kids. Welcome to parenthood." Brandon: "Once we get control of the full trust, we can set some boundaries, maybe a monthly allowance or something." The paper felt cold between my fingers. My own children plotting to manage me like I was the child who couldn't be trusted with money. The real numbers were even worse. Brandon had gambling debts of $180,000 across 3 casinos. Ashley had spent $120,000 on cosmetic surgery procedures she'd never mentioned. Neither of their business opportunities existed. I started making phone calls. The Boston Medical Conference invitation arrived in October. Richard Blackwood would present our partnership to 500 medical professionals. Humanitarian cooperation in medical innovation. My role was simple: stand beside him, share my story, represent the human side of pharmaceutical research. Ashley called immediately when she saw the news coverage. "Daddy, this is amazing. Can I bring some colleagues to meet you? This could be incredible for my career." Brandon's interest was more financial. "Dad, there will be pharmaceutical investors there. This could be huge networking for Pinnacle Innovations." For the first time in months, they were calling me every day. Not to check on my health or happiness, not to share their lives or ask about mine, only to position themselves for maximum benefit from my moment of recognition. I agreed to bring them. I wanted to believe their sudden attention meant something real. Patricia Walsh helped me prepare a folder of documents: bank records, expense reports, trust agreements, and the recorded conversations Torres had gathered. Everything I needed to protect myself if things went wrong. "Jacob, you don't have to do anything dramatic. Just be prepared if they try to manipulate the situation." They had no idea I was ready for war. The Boston Medical Conference Center buzzed with 500 of the most respected medical professionals on the East Coast. Pharmaceutical executives, research directors, hospital administrators, and medical journalists. Camera crews from 3 networks set up near the main stage. I stood in the wings wearing a navy suit that actually fit properly, purchased for this specific occasion. My hands were steady for the first time in months. The spotlight warmth felt different than I'd expected. Not harsh, but welcoming. Brandon and Ashley arrived 30 minutes late, making an entrance in designer outfits that cost more than my monthly plasma income. Ashley's dress was red silk, probably $3,000. Brandon's suit was custom tailored, with Italian leather shoes that gleamed under the conference center lights. The program listed Jacob Stewart Family Foundation as a co-sponsor, though no such foundation existed. I watched my children position themselves near the VIP section, shaking hands with pharmaceutical executives and introducing themselves as co-benefactors of the medical breakthrough. Richard Blackwood found me backstage. "Jacob, are you ready? This is your moment. You've saved my life, and now everyone will know." I watched them prepare to steal credit for everything. The presentation went perfectly. Richard explained the science with clarity and passion. The audience asked thoughtful questions about the research process, the potential applications, the future of personalized medicine. Then came the interview portion. Bloomberg Television wanted to discuss the humanitarian aspect of our partnership. The reporter, a sharp woman in a professional blazer, directed her first question to me. "Mr. Stewart, this partnership represents a new model of medical philanthropy. How did your family decide to approach this opportunity?" I started to answer, but Brandon stepped forward smoothly. "Actually, I can speak to that. Our family investment strategy focuses on leveraging Dad's unique medical situation to create sustainable philanthropic impact." Ashley nodded enthusiastically. "We've been working to structure this partnership in a way that maximizes both medical benefit and financial sustainability." The reporter looked confused. "I'm sorry, investment strategy? Mr. Stewart, I thought this was about your rare blood condition." Brandon's smile never wavered. "Obviously, Dad's medical condition is the foundation, but Ashley and I are the ones turning this into a business empire. We're entrepreneurs, not just blood suppliers." The audience laughed at blood suppliers, actual laughter at my expense, while my children redefined my life-saving partnership as their business strategy. Then the questions started. "So, Mr. Brandon Stewart, what's your role in the medical research?" "I handle the business development side, market analysis, revenue optimization, strategic partnerships. Dad provides the biological component, but Ashley and I provide the vision." Ashley leaned into the microphone. "That's exactly right. Daddy's blood is valuable, but without proper business strategy, medical breakthroughs don't reach their full potential. We're the ones scaling this into something transformational." The Bloomberg reporter pressed further. "Mr. Stewart, how do you feel about your children's involvement?" Before I could answer, Brandon jumped in again. Look, let's be honest here. My father is just the blood supplier. Ashley and I are the real entrepreneurs. Anyone can sell plasma. We're the ones building this into generational wealth. The auditorium fell uncomfortably quiet. I felt blood rushing to my face, my hands clenching involuntarily. The world seemed to spin slightly as I watched my children explain to 500 medical professionals how I was just the raw material in their success story. Ashley added with a bright smile, "Daddy's sweet, but let's be realistic. We're the ones with the education and vision to maximize this opportunity." More laughter from the audience, not mean-spirited, but amused by these confident young people discussing their father like a business asset. That was the last time they'd call me Daddy. The networking reception after the presentation was worse. I stood near the bar holding a club soda that had gone warm, listening to my children pitch pharmaceutical executives on investment opportunities I'd never heard of. Brandon to a group from Pfizer. Dad's basically our employee now. We provide the strategic oversight. He provides the blood. It's a pretty straightforward arrangement. Ashley to medical colleagues from Johns Hopkins. We're using his situation to build generational wealth. The medical research is amazing, but the real opportunity is in the business applications. They discussed me like I wasn't standing 15 feet away, like I couldn't hear every word, like I'd become invisible except for the rare blood flowing through my veins. Dr. Patricia Martinez from Massachusetts General approached me during a quiet moment. "Mr. Stewart, I have to ask, are you comfortable with how your children are representing this partnership?" I looked across the room at Brandon, who was showing investors a presentation on his phone. Ashley stood beside him, nodding and smiling as they explained their portfolio approach to my medical condition. Other attendees were beginning to look uncomfortable with my children's behavior. I caught whispered conversations, concerned glances, the subtle social cues that indicated people were noticing something wrong. How much worse can this get? The final moment came when I approached my children during their investor pitch to a group of pharmaceutical venture capitalists. They were standing in a circle near the floor-to-ceiling windows, animated and confident. "Brandon, Ashley, could I speak with you privately for a moment?" Brandon didn't even turn around fully. His dismissal was casual, automatic. "Dad, the adults are talking business now. This is probably too complex for you to follow." Ashley's response was worse. She placed her hand on my arm with the patronizing gentleness you'd use with a confused elderly relative. "Maybe you should go rest, Daddy. We're discussing investment structures and equity positions. It's not really your area." The group of investors looked mortified. These were experienced business people who understood family dynamics, and what they were witnessing clearly made them uncomfortable. I pulled out my phone and started recording. The sound quality was perfect in the acoustically designed conference center. "Just to be clear," I said quietly, "you want me to leave while you discuss business opportunities based on my blood?" "Dad, we've been through this," Brandon said with audible frustration. "You're the donor. We're the strategists. Everyone has their role." Ashley nodded. "Exactly. We love you, but let's stay in our lanes." The investors were staring now. One of them cleared his throat and stepped away from the conversation. That was the last time they'd call me Dad. I left the conference without saying goodbye. My children didn't notice my departure. They were too busy networking, too focused on converting my medical partnership into their social capital. The drive home took 37 minutes in unusual silence. No radio, no phone calls, just the quiet hum of tires on pavement and the clarity that comes after months of confusion. At 11 p.m., I called Patricia Walsh. "Patricia, it's Jacob Stewart. I need to restructure everything. The trusts, the contracts, the inheritance planning, all of it." Her voice was gentle but unsurprised. "What happened at the conference, Jacob?" "They called me the blood supplier, in front of 500 medical professionals and 3 television crews. They explained that anyone can sell plasma, but they're the real entrepreneurs." The silence on her end lasted exactly long enough for the impact to settle. I have recordings, documents, and finally, clarity about what needs to happen. "Jacob, are you sure? Once we start this process, there's no going back." I looked at the business card she'd given me months earlier. "Patricia Walsh, corporate litigation specialist. I'd carried it in my wallet like a life insurance policy. Monday morning, everything would change. I sat in my studio apartment until 3 a.m., surrounded by bank statements, trust documents, and the printed transcripts of my children's group chat messages. The coffee had gone cold hours earlier, but my hands remained steady as I reviewed every financial detail. For the first time in 2 years, my thoughts felt crystal clear. This wasn't about revenge. This wasn't about punishment. This was about dignity and boundaries and the difference between love and enabling. My father's voice echoed from 30 years ago during one of our last conversations before cancer took him. Love without respect isn't love at all, Jacob. It's just transaction disguised as affection. I'd enabled their behavior by refusing to set boundaries. I'd mistaken their manipulation for gratitude, their exploitation for need. I'd convinced myself that unlimited financial support was the same as parental love. Looking in the bathroom mirror at 4 a.m., I saw a man I'd forgotten existed. Not the desperate plasma donor or the naive benefactor, just Jacob Stewart, who had value beyond his bank account and dignity worth protecting. I finally understood what I had to do. Patricia Walsh's forensic accountant finished his review on Thursday morning. The numbers were worse than I'd suspected, but clearer than I'd feared. Brandon's actual debts, $390,000 in casino markers, personal loans, and credit obligations, hidden across 7 different institutions. His startup had never filed for business registration. Pinnacle Innovations existed only as a website and a checking account. Ashley's expenses included $120,000 in cosmetic procedures over 8 months, breast augmentation, rhinoplasty, lip fillers, and treatments I'd never heard of. Her medical research investment was actually a medical spa franchise opportunity that had been declined by 3 other investors. Both children had used their trust funds as collateral for personal credit lines, technically constituting embezzlement under Massachusetts law. The evidence was documented, time-stamped, and absolutely clear. Jacob, the accountant explained, they violated their fiduciary duty as trust beneficiaries. You have legal grounds for complete fund recovery. Patricia spread the contract documents across her conference table. We can restructure your blood partnership through a new LLC, remove your children from all financial access, protect your assets going forward. What legal weapons does Jacob actually have? That evening, I sat on my apartment floor, surrounded by photo albums. Brandon's first day of school, gap-toothed smile and Superman lunchbox. Ashley's high school graduation, tears of joy streaming down her face as she hugged me after receiving the valedictorian award. Those children were gone. The people who'd called me just the blood supplier were strangers wearing my children's faces, carrying my children's names, but operating with values I'd never taught them. The grief felt clean somehow, final, like mourning someone who'd died, except I was mourning someone who'd chosen to disappear. I called Richard Blackwood to explain the situation honestly. His response surprised me with its immediate understanding. Jacob, I've seen this before. Sudden wealth reveals character. It doesn't change it. You're making the right decision. I packed away family photos, folded childhood artwork, sorted through decades of memories that belonged to people who no longer existed. The cardboard boxes felt heavier than they should, weighted with love that had been transformed into something unrecognizable. I was ready to say goodbye forever. Friday morning's attorney meeting restructured my entire financial future. Patricia Walsh's efficiency was remarkable. Within 3 hours, my blood partnership was transferred to Stewart Medical Holdings, LLC, with me as sole owner and operator. The trust funds were frozen pending investigation. All credit lines using trust assets as collateral were revoked. My will was rewritten, excluding Brandon and Ashley completely and establishing charitable foundations for medical research and working-class education. Jacob, this protects you going forward, but it also sends a clear message. Your children will need to build their own lives without access to your wealth. The new corporate documents felt substantial in my hands. Official stamps, notarized signatures, legal language that created walls around my assets that no amount of manipulation could breach. Richard Blackwood had agreed to expand our partnership. New research applications had increased the contract value to $4.2 million over 10 years. My blood would help develop treatments for 3 different genetic disorders. Your generosity is being redirected to people who will appreciate it, Patricia explained as I signed the final documents. They still had no idea what was coming. Tuesday morning, their phones would start ringing. The cease and desist letters were delivered by certified mail at 8:47 a.m. on Tuesday. Identical envelopes to Brandon's Cambridge apartment and Ashley's Back Bay studio. Legal papers with crisp edges and official seals that meant business. By 9:15 a.m., both trust accounts were frozen, pending investigation of potential embezzlement. Bank of America's fraud department moved with impressive speed, once presented with documented evidence of unauthorized collateral usage. At 9:23 a.m., all credit lines based on trust fund collateral were immediately revoked. Brandon's Amex Black Card was declined at a coffee shop near Harvard. Ashley discovered her credit freeze when her autopay for her Mercedes lease was rejected. My phone started ringing at 9:31 a.m. I didn't answer. I was in Patricia Walsh's office, signing court documents, filing charges under Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 266, Section 57, Embezzlement by Trustee or Agent. Court filing number CV 2024-1156, Stewart v. Stewart. Their entitled world was crumbling. Brandon's frantic voicemails filled my inbox throughout Wednesday. Voice messages that progressed from confusion to anger to desperation. Dad, there's some mistake with the bank accounts. Dad, this isn't funny anymore. Call me back. Dad, you're destroying my startup over some misunderstanding. Ashley's approach was different. She showed up at my apartment building at 6 p.m., crying in the lobby until the security guard called upstairs. I watched her from my window. Designer dress, perfect makeup ruined by tears, standing beside her Mercedes that would be repossessed within the week. I didn't go downstairs. By Thursday, news outlets had picked up the story. Medical partnership airs children accused of trust fund embezzlement. The Boston Globe ran quotes from the audio recordings Torres had gathered. Brandon, Dad's basically our employee now. Ashley, anyone can sell plasma. We're the real entrepreneurs. Their attempted character assassination backfired spectacularly. Social media responses were universally sympathetic to the father who'd sacrificed everything for ungrateful children. How much deeper will they dig themselves? My new apartment near Blackwood Pharmaceuticals was smaller than my studio, but felt enormous. Clean spaces, quiet hallways, neighbors who nodded politely without knowing my story. The nameplate on my office door read Jacob Stewart, VP of Medical Relations. Not Chief Medical Relations Officer. Richard had promoted me after seeing how I handled the family crisis. Leadership under pressure, he'd called it. My role involved coordinating with hospitals worldwide, explaining our partnership to medical students, and speaking at conferences about ethical medical research. For the first time in my adult life, people listened to my words instead of evaluating my usefulness. The scholarship fund was established within a month. Stewart Foundation for Working Family Education would help 200 students annually pursue medical or technical careers. Students whose parents worked multiple jobs, who understood the value of education earned through sacrifice. Media interviews portrayed me exactly as I was, a father exploited by the children he'd loved unconditionally. The narrative was clear, sympathetic, and completely accurate. But the children weren't done fighting. Their attorney was expensive and ineffective. Harold Morrison from Morrison & Associates filed a challenge to the trust modifications, claiming I'd acted under emotional duress and demanding restoration of their access. The discovery process was brutal for my children. Patricia Walsh's team uncovered additional hidden debts, forged documents, and evidence of coordinated deception spanning 2 years. Judge Catherine O'Brien reviewed the case with obvious distaste. Her ruling was scathing. The defendant's behavior constitutes unconscionable exploitation of parental trust. Their attempt to challenge protective measures taken by their victim demonstrates continued lack of remorse or understanding of their actions. court-ordered restitution, $425,000 to be repaid to Stewart Medical Holdings, LLC from any future earnings of Brandon Stewart and Ashley Stewart. The precedent was established. Massachusetts law now explicitly protected parents from financial exploitation by adult children. The law was finally on my side, but I wasn't finished yet. The expanded blood partnership was worth $4.2 million due to breakthrough research applications. My rare enzymes could help develop treatments for Huntington's disease, ALS, and early onset Alzheimer's. The corporate structure protected everything through Stewart Medical Holdings, LLC. My children were permanently removed from my will, not reduced inheritance, complete exclusion. The document was explicit, having demonstrated through their actions that they view their father as merely a source of financial gain, rather than as a person deserving of respect and love. Brandon Stewart and Ashley Stewart are hereby excluded from any inheritance, trust, or benefit from the estate of Jacob Stewart. The trust funds they had exploited were dissolved entirely. Every dollar was redirected to charitable foundations focusing on elder abuse prevention and working-class education. My financial advisor confirmed that my new corporate structure made it impossible for my children to make any future claims against my wealth. Even if they challenged my mental competency, the assets were legally separated from my personal estate. Contract BW 2024-1203 was the amended agreement with enhanced terms and ironclad protection. It was time for the final goodbye. I changed my phone number on January 15th. The old number, the one my children had called for 24 years, was disconnected without forwarding information. My new address was unlisted, known only to Patricia Walsh, Richard Blackwood, and the HR department at Blackwood Pharmaceuticals. Social media accounts were deleted. Email addresses were changed. I blocked Brandon and Ashley on every platform I'd ever used, creating digital walls as impenetrable as the legal ones. The storage unit contained everything I'd saved from their childhood: report cards, art projects, sports trophies, photo albums, covering 2 decades of memories. I paid for a year in advance and mailed them the key with a simple note. Your childhood belongings are in Unit 247 at Boston Storage Center. The rental is paid through next January. My final conversation with Rebecca was brief and civil. She understood my decision completely. Jacob, I'm sorry. I taught them that love was conditional on material benefit. You're breaking a cycle that needed to be broken. 6 months passed in perfect quiet. My role at Blackwood Pharmaceuticals expanded internationally. I spoke at medical conferences in Geneva, London, and Tokyo about ethical partnerships between pharmaceutical companies and individual donors. Audiences respected my expertise, not my bank account. The Harvard Alumni magazine featured a profile, From Janitor to VP, the unlikely medical pioneer. For the first time, my professional identity existed separately from my role as anyone's father or benefactor. Volunteer work at Boston Children's Hospital connected me to families fighting medical battles with courage and dignity. Parents who understood that love meant sacrifice without expectation of reward. Children who appreciated care because they understood its value. My colleagues at Blackwood treated me as an equal. Coffee conversations focused on research protocols and patient outcomes, not family dynamics or financial obligations. Respect based on competence felt revolutionary after 2 years of being valued only for my blood and bank account. I discovered leadership abilities I'd never known I possessed. The confidence that comes from setting boundaries and protecting dignity. How are the children handling his absence? Their attempts to reach me came through mutual acquaintances. Harvard staff members who'd known me for 30 years, former neighbors, Rebecca's sister who called with messages I politely refused to hear. Jacob, Brandon wants you to know he's been attending financial counseling. Ashley asked me to tell you she's sorry and wants to make things right. My responses were consistent and firm. I appreciate their attempts to change, but I'm not available for reconciliation. Please don't pass along any more messages. Patricia Walsh's legal team maintained protective barriers against more direct manipulation attempts. Restraining orders weren't necessary, but official documentation made my boundaries legally clear. My therapist, Dr. Sarah Chen, confirmed what I already knew. Healthy boundary setting isn't cruel or vindictive. It's self-preservation. The occasional night brought sadness about lost relationships, but mornings brought relief about protected dignity. I slept better than I had in years. My blood pressure stabilized. The chronic tension in my shoulders finally relaxed. I felt lighter than I had in decades. But they were still learning lessons. Brandon's startup collapsed within 3 months. Without trust fund money to sustain the illusion, Pinnacle Innovations revealed itself as exactly what it had always been: a website and a bank account. His MBA classmates distanced themselves once the embezzlement story became public. Harvard Business School values networking and reputation above everything else. Brandon's association became a liability that none of his peers could afford. By summer, he was working at a software company in Waltham, earning $67,000 annually as a junior business analyst, the same salary I'd made as a university supervisor before the plasma donations started. Ashley's cosmetic surgery residency application was rejected after her background check revealed the trust fund scandal. Medical institutions don't accept students with documented histories of financial impropriety. She found work at a community clinic in Dorchester, earning $52,000 as a physician's assistant. Important work, respectable work, but far from the luxury dermatology practice she'd envisioned. Both children were learning the actual value of money for the first time in their adult lives. Budgeting for groceries, calculating utility costs, understanding why I'd eaten peanut butter sandwiches while selling my plasma to fund their dreams. Will they learn humility or continue blaming others? Their former social circles evaporated with impressive speed. Trust fund friends disappeared when the trust funds were frozen. Medical colleagues maintained professional distance from Ashley's ethical complications. Brandon's investor contacts stopped returning calls. Dr. Patricia Martinez from Massachusetts General mentioned Ashley's situation during a casual conversation. The medical community is small. Everyone knows about the family exploitation case. It's difficult to build trust with colleagues after something like that. Brandon's LinkedIn profile showed a professional decline from founder and CEO to business analyst. His startup accomplishments were quietly deleted, replaced with generic corporate descriptions. Ashley's social media posts took on a desperate tone. Public apologies mixed with justifications. Requests for understanding and forgiveness that revealed she still didn't understand what she needed forgiveness for. I made mistakes, but I never stopped loving my father. And the comments sections filled with responses from other parents who'd experienced financial exploitation by adult children. Ashley's posts became inadvertent support groups for families dealing with similar betrayals. They were starting to understand. The letters started arriving in October, forwarded through Patricia Walsh's office, anonymous envelopes containing handwritten apologies from Brandon and Ashley. Brandon's letter was 3 pages of careful cursive, acknowledging poor financial decisions and disrespectful behavior, without quite admitting to deliberate exploitation. He included a $500 check from his new salary. Partial restitution, he calculated, would take 17 years to complete. Ashley's approach was more emotional. Photos of herself volunteering at homeless shelters, documentation of financial counseling sessions, a detailed budget showing how she was learning to live responsibly on her clinic salary. Both letters requested a chance to earn back your trust and an opportunity to prove we've changed. I read every word carefully, sitting in my Brookline apartment with herbal tea and complete emotional clarity. The growth seemed real. The remorse appeared genuine. But apologies don't erase years of deliberate disrespect. Changed behavior doesn't undo the damage of viewing your father as a business asset. Patricia Walsh offered to arrange supervised meetings. Dr. Chen suggested family therapy. Richard Blackwood supported whatever decision would bring me peace. I kept the letters in a filing cabinet and maintained the no-contact boundary. Some damage can't be undone. 3 years later, Our medical partnership has saved 847 patients worldwide. My rare blood enzymes led to breakthrough treatments for genetic disorders affecting thousands of families. The Stewart Foundation has provided scholarships to 2,700 students whose parents work multiple jobs to support their children's education. Blood, Sweat, and Boundaries, A Father's Guide to Love and Limits, became a bestseller after I partnered with a ghostwriter to document our story. The book helps parents recognize financial exploitation and establish protective boundaries before relationships are damaged beyond repair. The Massachusetts legislature passed the Stewart Protection Act in 2026, strengthening legal protections for elderly and vulnerable adults against financial exploitation by family members. 12 other states have introduced similar legislation. I speak regularly at conferences about elder abuse prevention, not medical partnerships. The real expertise I developed wasn't about rare blood enzymes. It was about recognizing when love becomes enabling and when boundaries become necessary for survival. The foundation plaque in Blackwood Pharmaceuticals lobby reads, "Dedicated to parents who sacrifice without expecting exploitation in return." But I had one final message to leave. The sealed envelope sits in a safety deposit box at First National Bank, along with my will and final instructions. The outside inscription reads, "To be opened only if they truly change." Inside, 2 sentences on plain white paper. Love requires respect. Respect requires boundaries. Instructions specify that the letter should be released to Brandon and Ashley only after they've completed 5 consecutive years of financial independence, community service, and documented personal growth. Not because I expect reconciliation, but because some truths take time to understand. My final reflection, written on quiet Sunday mornings in an apartment that belongs entirely to me. I learned that sometimes loving someone means protecting yourself from them. I learned that generosity without boundaries becomes exploitation. I learned that my value existed independent of my bank account or my blood type. I sold my blood for $60 to survive. I'm living now knowing I'm worth $60 million. The difference wasn't the money. The difference was learning my own value.